So just to kind of go back in chapter two from last week, we know this is when it had been about 4 months. Nehemiah came in front of King Artaxerxes and he essentially presented his business plan. He went to the Small Business Association, the SBA, and he said, "Hey, here's my request. I'm looking to start a new establishment right here on 380. It was tore down, and I want to build it back up again." So that's what he did. And the mayor of 380 said, "You know what? I'm going to give you everything that you need." So
That's you.
no, that's not me.
That is you.
So that's what he did. But with that, he knew he had some foresight. He said he knew he was going to need some papers to certify some passports, if you will, to not only get through the areas, but to also approve of the work that was to be done. And he had those. He did his due diligence to know not only the materials he needed, but also the paperwork that he needed. He got his permitting done, all these things, which reminds me of a time we went to Bahama Bucks. If any of you have ever been there before, it's fantastic. And I talked to an owner, and he was saying how the city made him like move his building like 5 inches for some reason. Like they literally had to like jack up the entire building and move it over so he could get a permit. But that's what he did. And so he experienced some opposition. With that opposition, he went into Jerusalem now. He inspected and surveyed the land. He spent some time there trying to see what the damage was. He was counting the cost, if you will. And he did it without really like the head people in town knowing, so he could then present to them his business plan from their perspective. And so he got what he needed. It really ended with some more opposition, which we'll continue to see that. But it ended with in verse 20. So I answered them and said to them, "The God of heaven will give us success. Therefore, we, his servants, will arise and build, but you have no portion, right, or memorial in Jerusalem." And we talked about how like basically they're not going to have their name on the brick, right? They're building back up again, and they didn't give into the endowment fund or the building fund, whatever the case may be, even spoke against it. And so now they're not really going to be a part of it. But just to have this confidence that Nehemiah has, saying the God of heaven will give us success. It's not that we may get success. It could happen. It's that he will give us success, and therefore his servants will arise and build. So they hadn't built yet, but they're now going to arise and build. And that is leading us into chapter 3 today, which we'll be covering chapter 3 and 4. But it leads us into chapter 3. And so is there any questions or anything that have gone from the first 2 weeks from chapter 1 or even in chapter 2 before we kind of get into this chapter 3 today? You have anything?
Oh, good.
So we were joking before getting on today about, I'm always like, oh, my lovely wife is going to read through the passage today. And she was like, these names up in here. So look, we getting grace for all the names that are coming in chapter 3.
I told him, I said, my grandmother, after she meets people for about 10 minutes, she'll give you a nickname. Like she just, I don't know. She just like that. So I might be doing that today.
I remember I did a sermon before on prayer with King Jehoshaphat in 2nd Chronicles. And I would just call him King Jeho because I was like, I don't feel like saying the entire thing. So that's just what I called him. So yeah, we'll get some nicknames. I'm sure they even had nicknames at the time. A lot of people had the same name. So I'm sure
I made you version read them.
Huh?
Yeah.
I made you version read it for me.
Yeah.
Like read it out loud.
Same.
Yeah.
Same here.
And so with that, even we're doing 2 chapters this week, just because with the names, it's kind of like, okay, let's kind of have something to kind of go behind it. But without further ado, it's 32 verses. I feel like, maybe you
read the whole thing.
Well, yeah, but so I feel like we can maybe do like 8 at a time. I think that's, or 10 at a time, something like that.
Got it.
There's really no hard stopping point. So maybe we can do like the first 10 verses, and then we'll kind of pause and discuss and kind of keep going through.
This entire chapter literally looks like just like roll call.
Yeah.
I mean, it pretty much is. So yeah.
So you do want me to read it?
You don't want to read it?
I mean, if you want it read, I will read it. Yes.
Pipe in.
Yeah, when he says, if y'all ever talk to him, he says,
I think we should make Matt read it.
No, because I don't have any of the versions you guys have.
I mean, I think there's something to be said, and honestly,
I want my name read when I die, so I'm reading it.
And let me put this into perspective. They rebuilt the temple. They're rebuilding the wall to be protected by opposition. also Ezra can come in and read the word of God.
Mhm.
And we'll see that in later chapters. So it's, in a sense, the book is about getting to them reading the word of God. So
I did that on purpose, so you would say that.
we kind of have to read the word of God. So,
Antoinette, just get ready for all the Jewish names. Just a lot of.
I know. I was joking the whole time. I knew I was gonna read. We talked about this before.
all right.
All right. Elisha, but the high priest and his fellow priests went to work and rebuilt the sheep gate. They dedicated it and set its doors in place, building as far as the tower in the 100, which they dedicated as far as the tower of Hananel. The men of Jericho built adjoining section, and Zechar, son of Imri, built the next to them. The fish gate was rebuilt by the sons of Hassanah. They laid its beams and put its doors and bolts and bars in place. Meremoth, son of Uriah and son of Hakaz, repaired the next section. Next to him, Meshulam and the son of Berekah, the son of M, made repairs, and next to him, Z, son of
There you go. Yeah,
also
you got it.
made repairs. The next section was repaired by the men of T, but their nobles would not put their shoulders to work under their supervisors. The J gate was repaired by J, son of P, and M, son of B. They laid its beams and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. Next to them, repairs were made by men from Gibeon and Mizpah, and M and Gibeon and J and M in places under the authority of governor of Trans-Euphrates. Israel, son of H, one of the goldsmiths, repaired next to the section, and H, one of the perfume makers, made repairs next to that. Then they restored Jerusalem as far as the broad wall. And R, son of Hur, ruler of half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section. Adjoining this, J, son of H, made repairs opposite his house. And H, son of H, repairs made next to him. And M, son of H, and H, son of P, repaired in another section in the tower of the ovens. Shalom, son of H, ruler of the half district of Jerusalem, repaired the next section with the help of his daughters. The valley gate was repaired by H and the residents of Z. They rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. And they also repaired 1,000 cubits of the wall as far as the dung gate. The dung gate was repaired by M, son of R, ruler of the district of B. He rebuilt it and put its doors with their bolts and bars in place. You understand?
Oh, I mean, it's all gonna keep going. Let me pick up.
Sure, go.
Shalom, the son of Kohazeh, the official of the district of Mizpah, repaired the fountain gate. This is in verse 15, by the way. He built it, covered it, hung its doors with its bolts and bars in the wall of the pool of Shalah at the king's garden as far as the steps that descend from the city of David. After him, Nehemiah, the son of Azbuk, official of half the district of Bethzur, made repairs as far as the point opposite the tombs of David, and as far as the artificial pool in the house of the mighty men. After him, the Levites carried out repairs under Rehum, the son of Benai. Next to him, Hashabiah, the official of half the district of Kalah, carried out repairs for his district. After him, their brothers carried out repairs under Bavai, the son of Henadad, official of the other half of the district of Kalah. Next to him, Ezer, the son of Jeshua, the official of Mizpah, repaired another section in front of the ascent of the armory of the angle. After him, Baruch, the son of Zabai, zealously repaired another section from the angle of the doorway of the house of Elishab, the high priest. After him, Meremoth, the son of Uriah, the son of Hakaz, repaired another section from the doorway of Elishib's house, even as far as the end of his house. After him, the priests, the men of the valley, carried out repairs. After them, Benjamin of Hashab carried out repairs in front of their house. After them, Azariah, the son of Masah, the son of Ananiah, carried out repairs beside his house. After him, Benai, the son of Henadad, repaired another section from the house of Azariah as far as the angle and as far as the corner. Palau, the son of Uzai, made repairs in front of the angle and the tower projecting from the upper house of the king, which is by the court of the guard. After him, Pedaiah, the son of Parosh, made repairs. The temple servants lived in Ophel, made repairs as far as the front of the water gate toward the east and the projecting tower. After them, the Tekoites repaired another section in front of the great projecting tower and as far as the wall of Ophel. Above the horse gate, the priests carried out repairs, each in front of his house. After them, Zadok, the son of Immer, carried out repairs in front of his house. And after him, Shemaiah, the son of Shechaniah, the keeper of the east gate, carried out repairs. After him, Hananiah, the son of Shelemiah, and Hanun, the sixth son of Zelaph, repaired another section. And after him, Meshullam, the son of Berechiah, carried out repairs in front of his own quarters. After him, Malchijah, one of the goldsmiths, carried out repairs as far as the house of the temple servants and of the merchants in front of the inspection gate and as far as the upper room of the corner. In verse 32, between the upper room of the corner and the sheep gate, the goldsmiths and the merchants carried out repairs. Well, so as you said, Matt, this is essentially like a census. If you've ever read through Numbers, you've seen a census. And so with that, I heard a pastor say specifically about this chapter, ordinary can lead to the extraordinary. And so essentially here in chapter 3, it's very ordinary because all we're seeing is names, we're seeing gates and things like that. I know one of the questions was about how many people were involved. I believe as far as names, I think I counted 38, at least unique names, not including like the names of the fathers, because it might say like the son of somebody. But then it would also talk about other people. So for example, in verse 1, then Eliashib, the high priest, arose with his brothers and the priests. So his brothers, the priests, so those people weren't named. So we don't necessarily have like the exact number in this chapter, but we know that it was a great deal. And I think right away out the gate, when it talks about the high priest arose with his brothers, the priests, and built the sheep gate, it shows right away that essentially the pastors were setting the example. We go from a Nehemiah saying, hey, we're going to arise and build up. And with that, the leaders of the church are now starting the initiative and others are following suit. And so I thought that was just great to see right away. Thinking about us now, like with all of us coming into the church, and even for myself, somebody asked me, hey, like, what time do you get here? I'm like, I get here at 7:00 and we're, setting up and doing all the things. And they're like, and then you got to come and preach after that. I'm like, yeah, because I'm a part of this and I'm setting the example as well. So to see that right out the gate is amazing. And then it talks about, of course, I'm saying out the gate, but all of these different gates listed in here. Why do you all think that it talks about them building the gate? Because essentially they would build the gate and then they would kind of like work in between. But why do you think that the gates were mentioned so often? Is that Matt? Is that a hand up?
Yeah. I don't feel like pushing the button. So I think that it's very important they tell us where the gates are, just so we kind of have a perspective as far as the fact that this whole thing is being done all at once, right? It's not like we're starting on this end and working to this end. It's basically we've rallied the entire city at this point, and everybody has, I don't want to say they're assigned sections, but everybody's been told, hey, everybody work on the gate, and everybody, hand in hand is just starting to erect this gate, and is a huge undertaking looking at the times, right? It's not like they're just putting, a fence around their backyard here. It's like they're putting, a fence around Delaware. I mean, Delaware.
Yeah. So. Which is wow, that exactly like that's a great way to bring this into like today. Like, let's put a fence around this state,
right?
So everybody's gonna kind of
not Texas
doing that.
No.
We don't have enough timber for that.
Not enough gates.
And even just thinking of like the gates that these are entry and exit points, right? So these are the most, even though the wall was essentially in shambles, these are still the most vulnerable sections, because I mean, imagine where you live at now, maybe how many doors or windows that you have. And so just imagine that, those don't exist. It's like, well, let's kind of secure these entry and exit points, and then everything else can kind of be built out around that. And a lot of these gates that are listed kind of speak into some of the things that they would do. So you have, like the sheep gate, where it have like shepherds would go with their sheep. and just some other names that are along in there. But essentially, it was just like they all have a purpose. They all serve in these entry and exit points. And now let's kind of secure the those points that are most vulnerable. And then, because remember now, this wall, it was in shambles, but it wasn't like completely on the ground. Like they still had some places that were already kind of set up that they were adding to. And so let's make sure that we go to the doorways and secure the doorways. It's like at nighttime, she always talks about me, like I go to every door and lock all the doors, both locks, make sure the windows, like I do all the locks. And that's what they did. They started where it's most vulnerable and then kind of work in. Rebecca, you have something.
So sorry, this is Anna. But the significance of gates in Hebrew is actually quite significant. So it wasn't just an entry point, but they look at it as the entrance of life, right? So it is the life point where not only are you giving entry to the city and entry to its inhabitants, but you're ushering God in, you're ushering life into that city. So it wasn't just we're rebuilding the gate and this point of entry, but also that we're making this a place of significance. We're making this a place of life, and we're bringing life back to the city.
I also think it's pretty interesting. I mean, like, you know, when your wall has been torn down already, there's probably maybe a impulse to build it better and higher and and to secure all life in it. And they didn't just build a wall around the city, but they built a wall with gates. So they allowed others in. They made provision for leaving when necessary. They allowed commerce. I mean, all of these things that presumably a wall would protect, either for or against, you know, they wanted to make sure that they were making provision for that as well.
And I think to what you all are sharing, like there's something you mentioned about having a place to usher in God, right? A protected place, a safe place for them. And essentially, you know, God, you know, he created us to work. Even before sin came into the world, he told Adam to cultivate the land. And we're going to get into that on Sunday. We were made to work. And so in this sense, though, it can't be so focused. It's not just about the work, but who the work is for, right? And the work is for a place for God to dwell. That was the whole point for God to say, hey, let's have the tabernacle, let's have the temple, let's have these places for me to come and dwell with you. And you need to be in a frame of mind and even a frame of a city, if you will, where we can do that in a safe place. You know, we think about just for us as a church, like how are we being in a safe place in the school? And I know there's always people that are going to be looking, you know, hey, where are the exits at, right? Like when we go out to dinner, I'm always want to sit and looking at the door, like where are all the exits, and just having people to do that. But you guys are right, exactly. Like it's not about just the work itself, even though the work has much meaning, but it's really who is the work for. It's not about for them to build themselves up, like, look at what I did. It's about, look who this is about. This is it, you know, the book of Nehemiah is really about things happening for people who don't believe in God to then now believe in God. They can see how God is existing and being with people that they can actually see, and how they can then be a part of that as well. So I definitely agree with that and appreciate the insight there.
Also, I know that a lot of times when people are named, that talks about whose son they are or whose daughter they are. And for Nehemiah to have the initial motivation in his flesh to be like, that's my family. I got to go back because it's not okay for me to be here knowing that my family is suffering, even though he wasn't a native to Jerusalem. And so for them, I know we're kind of used to seeing this language of, you know, Antoinette's Antoinette's daughter of W. Vet. It's like this, very much like this is a family matter. This is something that is bigger than the people that you see doing the work. Like there were people there that endured not having a safe place before they got there. And I know when we talk about like the bloodline of Jesus, where it has so many names mentioned to get to Jesus when it starts from Adam and goes all the way. But just to have that bloodline to understand, like, so many people came before him to now we get to witness this moment. And so to kind of have that same kind of roll call, it was impactful to me to read that.
And even when
Well, and-
before, going back to chapter 1, when he was talking about that prayer and he was saying, us talking about his fathers and things, for him to be like, I wasn't around when they were around. I don't even know what it was like before now. Like, I'm coming into it, seeing it from nothing or in shambles and building it up. But I still want to give honor to my mother and father, if you will, in this, by making sure that they're included in this, because they're a part of this as well. They've already set the foundation from a spiritual and family standpoint for us to now build this foundation physically upon. And I want to give honor to them. And so I can imagine, him just hearing stories about, remember, your great uncle so-and-so, right? Like, he was here when this happened. And now just giving them some credit, and like you're saying, and then these identifiers, a lot of names were very common. So, it's like Jesus, son of Mary or son of Joseph, like, it's an identifier also, because there's another Nehemiah listed in here that's not even the same Nehemiah that is the leader of this book. So sometimes it's also just even about this identifier, not only of reverence, but also of, well, it's 5 Johns. So how, funny story. So Juan, who's on today, it was me, him, and another Juan from the church who went to go get some stuff this past week. And I was like, oh, I was with both Juans today from the church. And so it's like, okay, let me say the last name so you know which one I'm talking about.
Yeah, and then when he got home, he's like telling me everything that happened. And he's like, oh, and Juan Bell. I'm like, okay, all right, I think I know between the two. But yeah.
Well, and there's again another real significance to the fact that Hebrew is an oral history, right? So they believed in passing on the stories and things from an oral perspective. Most all of these are going to be spoken aloud because they believed that that was a way to bridge the past with the future. And they believed in the promise of God that if you named the forefathers and whatnot, you would be given a place, right? That there was a place for them. So there's even a word in Hebrew that basically means let us not forget the past, right? So it means let's bring it with us, let's learn from it, but we couldn't be who we are if we didn't stand on the shoulders of the people who came before us.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's the Matt or Karina.
I know which one.
It was me. So these are also basically like when they say son of, this person, that's basically last name as well, right? Because they didn't have last names until when, the Roman Empire, I think.
Like Simon Bar Jonah, right? Like
yeah. So that, just to kind of bring it like to a modern time, right? Because you give credit where credit's due. So like when somebody says Eric Patrick, back in those days, it would have been Eric, son of Patrick, so on and so forth. Or if you didn't know who your father was, it was your profession. So like Miller, right? So Bob Miller. Okay, Bob is a Miller. So right. Bob Miller.
We had looked that up like years ago, talking about that, and we thought that was very interesting how those names kind of came about, like you're saying, like Bridgeway. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like, oh, like there was a bridge, and that was the way. So that's just your name. Like, yes, Juan and Angie.
I might be jumping ahead or off track, but one thing, I don't know if anybody else, really irritated me in verse 5, that their nobles would not put their shoulder to work under their supervisors. I thought that was interesting. Like, I had a reaction. I guess I shouldn't have said irritated, but
fine.
Like, why didn't they do that? I can't stand that when leaders don't, or thinking of it from a work perspective of like, how does that, what would it have been like to be working in that situation? And I don't know if that's a way I'll task what we're talking about, but notable to me.
I think about like work situations now where I remember when I was working as a pharmacy tech at Georgetown Hospital in DC, and management would always come in making these adjustments. I feel like every month, every 2 months. And it's just like, none of y'all have delivered any of these medications. None of y'all have ever done any of these things. And you keep coming in making these demands, if you will, or adjustments. And it's just like, do you fully understand what you're doing? And it's almost like because of the lack of your doing, like it's just gonna make it more complicated. And in this sense, like kind of like what you're saying is like do you not see what's happening here? Like like this is literally history, and it's just like, so you're just not gonna help. When we had some work on our house, when we had moved in, we had to get our floor redone. And they had some people coming in to redo the floors, but there was a guy, I don't know if he was considered the foreman or something like that. But I came in one day and he was just sitting on the steps telling them like what to do. And I'm just like, are you helping or hurting this situation? Because like you literally aren't doing anything, like nothing. So I can only imagine what the other workers at the time were just like, this dude over here just sitting here with a glass of water. He's just gonna just tell me what to do, and he like, do something. Like,
yeah, but I mean, it's cool. And also to see all these names, like it took a lot of people to get this done.
mm-hmm.
So for all of these people to be working, and it's like, but you're not gonna help. It's like we're
They
all
made the permanent
doing this
list.
together. Yeah.
They made the permanent lifelong list of nobles who didn't help.
Right. Exactly.
So I don't think it was a good thing.
And I mean, I can think that's something in itself to have this like, okay, well, if my name's gonna be listed in something, I want to be one of the ones that is not listed as, oh, and they didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's like the very first name that is mentioned in verse 1. There is Elishabeth. They said that, by the way, his name means God restores. That's the meaning of his name.
Mm-hmm.
And it's mentioned also that his name, he's there not because his devotion to the job or to the work, but just because his position. Then that's why his name is there. And that's to the person that was sitting right there by the stairs. He's just in charge.
Yeah.
He's somebody that was high on the rank in a position, and that's why he's there, ready to point what to do and not to do. Again, the same as
Well, he was there to work.
but no, not to, well, he was to work, but he don't really did nothing. I was reading some of the commentaries, and he did basically nothing. It was not really into the work, but he was a priest, and then that's why he was there.
Mm-hmm.
Karina is
oh, yeah.
next.
Thank you. I just have to say that also all the names that are mentioned, I have to say it speaks a lot to the people that had faith in Nehemiah and had faith in his God, because he would talk about his God a lot. So it lets you know how many people believed in God more than the people that wanted the wall not repaired, that did not want the wall repaired. And the people that did not want the wall repaired are like people that want you to do well, just not better than them. And that's just sad altogether.
Yeah.
That's all.
The haters.
Something I noticed about mentioning like with the priests, right? Like I saw it says priests, it talks about goldsmiths, perfumers, people of all these different roles. And I thought that was just really cool to see people, everybody's occupation essentially wasn't listed, but to see some of these different occupations, and all of us clearly are in different roles and different things as far as jobs are concerned, but we're all a part of this church. We're all trying to do something to glorify God and to build something great here. And that's what they did. It was like, I mean, literally, you're talking about a goldsmith and a perfumer, but they're both building the wall.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you I'm a handyman by any means, but it's just like, okay, what do I need to do to come in to help out in whatever way that I can? And that's what I've done a couple things, but but essentially everybody was participating in this, no matter what their occupation was. And I think that was just like something that just really kind of stuck out to me. Is just the different roles that everybody had as well. But see, it's important to see the ones who were memorialized by name. and those who were grouped together or unnamed. It's important to the author that some were named and their contributions were important and others were just there.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. We always talk about how like we have these books of the Bible and they're associated with people's stories, but there were millions of people that lived during the time Jesus was alive, and we don't have their stories, but their stories are also important too. And our stories are being built right now, and they're not documented as a part of the Bible, but it still is important.
I think one last thing before we kind of can transition into chapter 4 was you have these moments of like the section. So like in verse 28, above the horse gate, the priest carried out repairs, each in front of his house. Verse 29, after them, Zadok, the son of Immer, carried out repairs in front of his house. And I know I shared this before about people repairing where they live, right? So imagine like what Matt already said. Imagine you're building this wall around the state of Delaware. So you're not trying to travel from one city to the next city to do things with a small crew. You know, it was brought to our attention about, you know, this loop that is coming in the area, right? Like 635 is a loop in itself in DFW, but there's another loop that's coming that's going to be even bigger. And so you're not going to have one crew of people working on the section at a time. It's going to take too long. You have to have people at each different section working on that specific section where they are. And so to see all these moments of like they repaired this section in front of their house or in front of, you know, this or across from their house, if you will. And everybody had a role, everybody had a job, and they also had a place. Even with you just going back into Genesis, right? You think about Adam being placed. It says God put him in the garden. Like he put him within a boundary. Like it means like this word garden just even means I can't think of the word, but it's just like it has borders, if you will. And so there's these borders for this wall, but everybody essentially has a border for what they're building too. Like, hey, I'm doing my part, like you do your part. And if we're all doing our parts, then we're going to create something truly, truly great. Anything else? Just kind of from, you know, I know this was a tough read, but anything else from chapter 3 before we kind of move into chapter 4?
So I actually just put this in chat as well, but I think it's really important here to note the ones that, again, they call out specifically of they repaired the ones in front of their own doors. But there were others that they say they repaired this and that and that and that all the way to the other gate, right?
Yeah.
It was very significant in those times that they did above and beyond. That meant that they were offering protection to people beyond just their house, right? So they were prepared to do more for the good of the city or the good of the Jews around them. So that to me was very significant because a lot of these people were meeting in households, right? This was very much the tradition. People were coming to each other's houses and they wanted the houses to be prepared in order to receive them.
I also thought it kind of conversely that if you do a crappy job in front of your own house and everyone knows that you built it, it's your fault that wall's a crappy wall. You know what I mean? So like there's a lot of aspect of ownership about, you know, presumably you're going to do a better job in front of your own house if basically it has your nameplate on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think
like,
even
it's like gate of the month. That's what they're
Right?
I think that's what we're going to name this chapter.
and even to what you were saying about like some had in front of their home and some were kind of doing this place and then the next place, it's like essentially like spiritual gifts, right? Like everybody has a sense of everybody has gifts and they can have different levels of influence with other people. That doesn't mean that they're less than in terms of their significance, but they do have, some can have greater and lesser influences depending upon what it is. And so in this sense, like there are, you know, I won't call them gifts, but essentially there are people who just kind of had more responsibility. And that's just kind of how things always go. There's going to be some with a little bit more responsibility than others. It doesn't mean that you're more significant, but it's just maybe your capacity is different. Maybe the time is different. You know, who knows what the size of everybody's house was, where if your house was a little bit smaller, maybe then you can come and help me because, you know, my family's a little bit larger, so it has to be a bigger house. and you might have now some time that you finished your section. So yeah, just kind of think of like how it's so many different things that go into this when we're talking about family and names, in remembrance of what's in the past, but also where we're going in the future, the roles that people have, and just how everybody truly was just coming together, no matter what their occupation was also.
Mhm.
Right. And I just wanted to say one powerful thing that stood out to me in chapter 3. I just love seeing the next to them, and then next to them, and then next to them. I just saw the power of unity, and I envision it like an assembly line. You know, we got this assembly line going, and you know, all of the pieces of this puzzle, it's going to come together. And so I just felt that unity, you know, and what it must have been like. You know, people were they were together, and they had this purpose and one mind, and they were just doing this great thing, and everybody just doing their part. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I just really I read next to them so many times in here. I'm like, ooh, wait. That was they were working. It's almost like I can, when you read God's word, what I try to do is just go into that time with them, and just try to imagine what it must have been like.
Juan and Angie, and then we'll move on.
Yes, just quick thing that I thought also was important, that what was the very first gate that they repaired was the ship gate, right? And the reason why is because they said that it was where all the ships was brought enter for the sacrifices. Then, and those are the first gate was built by all the priests. Nobody else was involved in that repairs, only the priests. And again, and it's something not curious, but that was the significance is way more, right? They said that the ship gate, there was a representation of Jesus as well, and for because he was the entrance for the kingdom. So,
Yes, just like the tabernacle.
Yeah. Well, we'll transition into chapter 4, as this is kind of, chapter 3 is setting the tone for chapter 4. We'll read the first 8 verses. We can talk a little bit and then go into the remaining, what is this, 20 or like 15 or so. So if you want to read verses 1 through 8.
When Sanballat heard that we were rebuilding the wall, he became angry and was greatly incensed. He ridiculed the Jews, and in the presence of his associates in the army of Samaria, he said, "What are those feeble Jews doing? Will they restore their wall? Will they offer sacrifices? Will they finish in a day? Can they bring the stones back to life from those heaps of rubble, burned as they are?" Tobiah the Ammonite, who was at his side, said, "What are they building? Even a fox climbing up on it would break down their wall of stones. Hear us, O God, for we are despised. Turn their insults back on their own heads. Give them over as plunder in the land of captivity. Do not cover up their guilt or blot out their sins from your sight, for they have thrown insults in the face of the builders." So we rebuilt the wall till all of it reached half of its height. For the people worked with all of their heart. But when Sanballat, Tobiah, and Arabs and Ammonites and the people of Asher heard that the repairs to the Jerusalem's wall had gone ahead and that the gaps were being closed, they were very angry. They all plotted together to come to fight against Jerusalem and stir up trouble against it.
So here we see this opposition. I mean, this is just chapter 4, and I think Nehemiah has been opposed like 3 or 4 times already.
Maybe like 300 or 400.
It's like, okay, you're getting on my nerves now. Like that's basically what's happening with Sanballat. He's like, he became furious and very angry and mocked the Jews. Now he's getting like vocal, right? Like before, I feel like it was this.
Turn the other
He's
cheek.
he's in chapter 2, he's like talking with Nehemiah. They're talking with Nehemiah, right? They're addressing him. Now it's like it's as if they're like going on like social media or something.
Yeah, that's
and they're
exactly
like,
how it
and
feels.
like, we're gonna cancel Nehemiah and these Jews over here with this wall. Like that's what's happening. Because we're talking about and mocking the Jews. Like now they're just being boisterous. Like we're gonna just go after you. And he spoke in the presence of his brothers and the wealthy men of Samaria and said, what are they doing? Like he's just trying to make a whole scene out
Mockery,
here.
yeah.
And what's happening is it's trying to stir up this division.
Mhm.
And we were talking earlier about how division, you hear about like division being one of the biggest enemies of a church is division, where how it's going to cause a split. And this division, thinking of like die and vision, this like there's two visions. So Nehemiah has a vision, but then Sanballat has a different vision in mind. And one is to build something for God's place to dwell. The other is for to not build for God's place to dwell. And they're trying to use all these different things, even from a legal standpoint. Well, if they rebuild the wall, that's going to go against the king and it's going to tear everything down. They're trying to use everything possible to cause this division and to bring people. And it's not even that they really have a vision of their own. They're just saying, don't believe in that one. Like, I don't have a good one for you, but just don't believe in that one. And to the point of, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts about in verse 4, no, is it verse 3? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was near him, and he said, even when they are building, if a fox should jump on it, he would break their stone wall down. Like, what, when y'all read that, what were y'all thinking about?
It was ridiculous. Now the fox might eat their food, but it's not going to knock down the stone wall.
They were definitely trying to take a shot at the I guess what they're assuming is poor craftsmanship, because if you go, I mean, we can kind of relate to that, because if you look back, it wasn't, masons that were building this. It was blacksmiths, goldsmiths, perfumers, priests, farmers. It wasn't, there might have been a mason or two amongst them, but it wasn't a bunch of masons and skilled craftsmen building this wall.
Yeah, like, you don't know about no spackle. Like, what are you doing over there?
Yeah. And then
I think another part of it is from the perspective. Oh, sorry, Matt, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I thought you were done.
Go ahead. You got it.
All right. Another part of it for me was it felt like them saying that it wouldn't take very much, right? It's just we can destroy you with a little pebble in your shoe rather than the big rocks, right? So to me, it was, almost like a sibling kind of picking at each other. Like, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. Not saying we're going to do anything directly to cause it to fail, but they believed that there wouldn't be much that would be needed in order to make it fail.
And something, Janelle, she put into the chat, small foxes destroy. And it makes me think of Dora the Explorer, right? And you have it's a fox, right? Swiper. And so but essentially, like with foxes though, there's always this connotation that they're like they're sly, they're cunning, they're here to destroy things, like Janelle was saying. And almost, I think, to the point of, I think initially, I think the bigger thing is, yes, there's this, it's this, a small thing could take it all down. Like literally I could just throw a pebble and the whole wall will probably crumble. But also, is there something to say, like, could it be that this fox should jump on it and it'll break their wall down? Like, could this be like Tobiah? This is Tobiah the Ammonite. Is he kind of like I could be this small pebble that could tear it down? Like, let me come in here and be this divisive entity, if you will, or person that me being one person can maybe stop 20 of you from working, which will prevent what actually needs to be done. I think initially in essentially it is, yes, a small thing could tear it down because of the bad craftsmanship. I absolutely believe, I think that's the main idea. But I wonder also if there's just this level of, hey, I could just say, a little leaven lumpens the dough. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, all I got to put is just a little bit of negativity in there. And all of a sudden, when we're working and next to him, hey, we've been working on this wall for a little bit now. I don't know if it's going to come out too well. You missed a spot right there. Like, and is it just going to be like this almost telephone game of sorts where it always started with was Tobiah coming in and saying, this ain't going to work. This ain't going to work. And now everybody could be kind of believing into that.
But there's so much devaluing happening. And that's, I think, what I see here. And it's not even that like social media situation where it's like you just want to just voice your unnecessary comments, but it's just, let's try our best to devalue what you're doing by saying like, well, they restore their wall, it was feeble. Like they're using these derogatory terms. It was just little heaps of rubble. And they have this sense of, this is extremely valuable to us. It's this place where we can come and worship and be with the Lord. But since there is no faith among the nobles and other governors there, then they don't see the value in rebuilding this wall.
And even to the question, can they finish in a day? They ain't gonna finish in a day.
Yeah, it was gone for 100 years.
Yeah, you just saying stuff at this point.
Yeah.
But one thing, like to see Nehemiah's initial response in verse 4, hear, O our God, how we are despised. Return their approach on their heads and give them up for plunder in the land of captivity. Do not forgive their iniquity and let not their sin be blotted out before you, for they were demoralized, the builders. And then verse 6, so we built the wall, and the whole wall was joined together to half its height, for the people had a mind to work. So Nehemiah's initial response was, I'm going to go to God in prayer. And he was just like, hey, get your boy, because they out here acting a fool. We trying to do what you called us to do, and they trying to get all in between that. And after they prayed, they got right back to work. Like he says, we built the wall and even made progress. We got to half the height. For the people had a mind to work. And I think that's just awesome to see, like they had a mind to work, or they just like, nothing's gonna get inside here to detract me from what I'm doing. Like I'm laser focused right now on this wall. I got 10 bricks today, and them 10 bricks gonna be the best 10 bricks I've ever laid in my life. And they are ready to go in. Karina and Matt.
So my thought, like reading this, and he's talking about their sins, and all I can think about is like, without that, and they definitely talked about how he went immediately to the rich, the wealthy people, right? And said, hey, this is going down. We need to stop this. My thought is there's got to be like maybe some criminal activity going on here too, because if there's walls, it's a lot harder to get these goods into a city, and it becomes a financial issue, right? So I want to think there's something that going on too. Yeah, they're trying to bring stuff in and hustle and whatnot.
Yeah, they can. So I wonder, just thinking about when Nehemiah first got all of his supplies and stuff when they came, like at what point was there, if any, it doesn't necessarily say, but a replenishing, right? Like, you might try to hang something up, and next thing you know, it's like, oh man, we got to go get some more screws. We used all of them now. And so there wasn't no Home Depot at the time. Like maybe they did, they had to have these neighboring places where maybe they could get some more resources in the event that they needed them. And to your point, Matt, it's just like, hey, the price of lumber has gone up. Okay, yesterday's price is not today's price, and if you want to keep going, you're gonna have to pay to play. That's what's gonna have to happen. So, hitting them from all different angles, not just an insult, but also economically or any other way that they could kind of come at them. And even in verse 8, all of them conspired together. So this is Sanballat, Tobiah, the Arabs and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites. Like now it's 5 groups of people coming up in here. All of them conspired together to come and fight against Jerusalem and to cause a disturbance because they saw that the breaches had been closed. So now we're hearing about half the wall is done, and the breaches, this is essentially going to be the gates. Okay, the doors is up. Like the doors is it's sealed, like it's going to be some issues now because it's getting to the point where we cannot get inside. We will not be able to get to them and gain access to them. So now let's all come together. We got a common enemy, and let's even fight against Jerusalem and cause a disturbance. I even looked up this word disturbance, and like it's like confusion. And we know the devil's the enemy, he's the art of confusion, right? He's gonna confuse people. So what would even that confusion kind of look like? And so they're trying to bring all of these things in, and ultimately Nehemiah is going to have to continue to pray, which this goes into verses 9 through 23. You want to read those for us?
Sure. But we prayed to our God and posted a guard day and night to meet this threat. Meanwhile, the people in Judah said, the strength of the laborers is giving out, and there's so much rubble that we cannot rebuild the wall. Also, our enemies said, before they know it or see us, we will be right there among them, and we will kill them and put an end to the work. Then the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times over, wherever you turn, they will attack us. Therefore, I stationed some of the people behind the lowest points of the wall at the exposed places, posting them by families with their swords, spears, and bows. After I looked things over, I stood up and said to the nobles, the officials, and the rest of the people, don't be afraid of them. Remember the Lord who is great and awesome, and he will fight for your families, your sons, your daughters, and your wives, and your homes. When our enemies heard that we were aware of their plot and that God had frustrated it, we all returned to the wall, each to our own work. From that day on, half of our men did the work, while the other half were equipped with spears, shields, bows, and with armor. The officers posted themselves behind all the people of Judah who were building the wall. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other. And each of the builders wore his sword at his side as he worked. But the man who sounded the trumpet stayed with me. Then I said to the nobles and the officials and the rest of the people, the work is extensive, so spread out. And we are widely separated from each other along the wall. Wherever you hear the sound of the trumpet, join us there. Our God will fight for us. So we continued the work, with half the men holding spears from the first light of the dawn till the stars came out. At that time, I also said to the people, have every man and his helper stay inside Jerusalem at night, so they can serve us as guards by night and as workers by day. Neither I nor my brothers, nor my men, nor the guards with me took off our clothes. Each had his weapon, even when he went to get water.
It's difficult times out here, man. You talking about you can't go get a drink of water without being strapped. Like that's what's going on. Like I'm just
like that.
that's what my Bible say.
I didn't expect that to come out of your mouth.
But in verse 9, with the opposition coming again, Nehemiah goes back to what he knows, right? He prays. But we prayed to our God, and because of them, we set up a guard against them day and night. So not only this time, before they prayed and they got back to work because they had a mind to work. Now they prayed, they're going to work, and they're going to be ready for warfare in the event that something pops off. And now you know, we talked about like with the fox, and like, can this kind of put something into people's ear? And right in verse 12, when the Jews who lived near them came and told us 10 times, they will come up against us from every place where you may turn. Like now, okay, they're starting to believe this message. They drinking the Kool-Aid. Like they're like, okay, Tobiah and Sanballat and some of these other folks out here, they're saying a couple things, and maybe there's some truth to that. And it's causing a disturbance. And Nehemiah, not only is he having to make sure that the wall's getting built, he's having to make sure that people feel safe. But then now he's having to deal with this tension within the own people. Now he's already dealing with opposition outside of the group. Now he's getting proposed with opposition inside of the group because they're having some fear, and he's having to address it. So just from this chapter, and about more opposition coming in stronger, you know, words of fight and being furious and angry, and now where they're having to essentially, you know, be on guard with weapons and with tools to work. What does this make you guys just kind of feel, or what are you seeing as you have kind of read through this or heard this read about just the people in general as they're doing this work?
One word: America.
Okay.
How about the whole armor of God? You got to keep yourself totally prepared all the time. No time to get ready. You got to stay ready.
Exactly. Yep. My big thing here was that the work had to keep going, right? They felt so strongly in the work that they were doing that they're like, whatever it takes, right? So we're gonna have a trowel in one hand and a gun in the other, whatever it is, right? You have to stay ready. And we know that opposition is going to come, right? That in every single book of the Bible, basically, it talks about this, that we know that the opposition is going to come. But if we're ready and we're prepared with the full armor of God, and we know what our role is, and we know that God is for us, then who can be against us?
Well, and that the opposition is not always going to come from outside.
That's good.
Yeah. My favorite, well, one of our family verses is 1 Peter 3:15. And if y'all been around us long enough, y'all will know that we say this all the time. But it says, always be ready to give an account for what you believe in. And that verse is right after people ridiculing Christians. And Peter is saying, like, don't take a break, but make sure that you do it. But then the end of that verse says to do it with gentleness and respect, because he has all this opposition. He could have easily transitioned, like, okay, instead of us building this wall, now we just gonna fight them because they're getting on my nerves. But they never did that. They stayed the course.
And even looking at in verse 20, at whatever place you are, before that, where is it at? 18. As for the builders, each wore his sword girded at his side as he built, while the trumpeter stood near me. Now, I don't know if the trumpeter was working or not, but I feel like probably wasn't, because you have to be aware. It's a security guard, right? You think of somebody at a place with all the TV screens and they're watching the security. Like, they're not the ones that are working at the register if it's a department store or whatever. They're actually having to watch things. And so just thinking of like Nehemiah, right, being the cupbearer, where it might seem like it's an insignificant role, but it's extremely significant role. And in this sense, this trumpeter, because it says stood near me, like this trumpeter was Nehemiah's cupbearer of sorts, because the cupbearer was the one responsible if the king would live or die. And in this sense, the trumpeter was going to be responsible for if everyone would live or die. This would be the person that would sound the horn to make sure that people, okay, the enemy's here or the enemy's coming, like we need to be ready. And so like that was an extremely important role, despite it not being a part of the actual wall where the emphasis in this book is really kind of laid into. And Maya, you have something?
Yeah, for me, it really just showed me that, like, me growing up being a huge like church kid, I love church, but the older I got, I was like, I really have to check my heart. Like, we know that we have to be aware of, we're going to have a lot of people that don't believe in what we believe in and being extremely hostile. But I had to check my heart and be like, I'm a church. I love church, but do I really believe in what I say I believe in? And do I, not just knowing it, as far as like the gospel or, educating myself on everything in the Bible, but do I actually believe in what I say I am, like, as a Christian? So for me, when I read it, I was like, along with being aware of my surroundings and, people will throw stones at you for what you believe in, I really wanted to make sure that my heart was in the right place for me to be able to spread the love and everything that, like how Jesus did. So that's what I thought when I read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Janelle, you have something?
I did. I want to say that I don't think I've ever, I've read this before, but it's hitting me a little different. I really think too, like something I noticed, they didn't all have the same weapon. Some of them had bows, some of them had this, some of them had that. I think too, it's important to know what to use in what event, in what situation. Like, I think it's important sometimes, like I'll give myself as an example. I'm so used, I've been working on being meek. Like I can be humble, but I have trouble being meek, which is very different than being humble. One preacher said that the difference is if you're being humble, that's not centering yourself in a situation. You know, there's a spotlight there, and you don't have to be in that spotlight, okay? But being meek is, you know, you're right, you know, you actually are not mistaken, and you know you have the ability to just end whatever it is with like one word, with one, you know, one phrase or whatever, and you choose to stand down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's important, like what I pulled from this just in that last part that we read, is that it's not always time to cut somebody. And even if you do, you have to, you know, my mom says, you know, make a calculated cut like a surgeon. Don't be a thief. They just cut you and don't care where they cut you. A surgeon makes a calculated cut, then they sew you back up after they remove the thing that was wrong or that was causing the problem. They sew you back up. But some people had like a breastplate, and sometimes it's not always time to take your sword. Sometimes it's blocking.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes it's avoiding an issue, even addressing it. It's not always for you to engage. Or people, or some of them that had the, I think it said they had bows. It's like sometimes you can't get close up with a problem. Sometimes you have to deal with that from a distance. You know, I loved how each person kind of like, they didn't stop the work no matter what was going on. They didn't
Yeah.
allow those to be distractions
Mhm.
for them. And I think we're living in a day and age with so much junk on social media, so much stuff going on in the world. These threats they pose a distraction for the work that God has called us to. And it's important to, even if you are having to deal with something, keep one hand moving.
Mm-hmm.
I pulled from a lot from this, but man, this was an awesome read.
Yeah. Matt and Karina.
So I want to put a little emphasis on the fact that it states that they did not undress. For me, that means they didn't doff their armor. And back in those days, it wasn't like today where I just throw my, my tactical vest on and go.
Mm-hmm.
It was a very involved process,
Yeah.
sometimes taking an hour.
Right.
So they are basic. I think that's basically telling us, we just stayed in a heightened alert, period.
Yeah.
I think there's a little more to that than just, we didn't take our clothes off. No, we didn't take our
Mhm.
armor off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you had something?
Mm-mm.
Oh, she didn't have something. Okay, bye.
Juan and Angie.
I guess for us is the invitation is to, we all have lives. We all can have to go to work, go to do what we need to do. But we always keep our Bible. And what it means, the Bible is the word of God in us. And is what is the sword, right?
Mhm.
It is the sword, and is what keep us away from trouble, from the enemy. We resist it. How we're gonna resist it? With the Bible, with the word of God, with the sword. That's the way that we keep ourselves safe. And it never says stop to do what you ever do and just no. It is keep working with one hand, and with the other one keep your word.
Yeah.
Always be aware, because the enemy is right there, and it's like a roaring lion. It's ready to devour whoever. And it's for those that forget the sword, for those that, or many times, myself, put myself there. Many times I trust more in my hands and the work that I can do. And I'm not relating to my lore and the war and everything that I've been learning. And that's when I can see my performance going down. And it's when I start to let the enemy sometimes go and whisper things, and the mocking that he's using in this verses is start to getting inside my heart, and start to uh, allow me to believe other stuff. And that's when many times Angie, once again, like I was mentioned last week, uh, she sees me like, okay, I'm down because I'm not where I supposed to. Then again, I have to continue working and reading, and in order to keep myself or ourselves safe.
Yeah,
Mhm,
that's
mhm.
so good. Just like in I think that's exactly what Nehemiah is talking to them about when he's telling them, like, don't be afraid. Remember, God is great. God is awesome. And he's going to fight for your family and your home. Like, don't be so concerned about the things that God gave you to enjoy, because he's the one that is greater to fight for you and to make sure that those things are safe. But you just keep doing what God has called you to do and don't be afraid. There's 365 times in the Bible when it says, do not be afraid. And I think God knew we needed one every day.
Mhm. Yeah, this is really speaking to me. Just she knows we've had conversation earlier today, and it's kind of been a heavy day for me, just because thinking of where we are as a church, what it is that we're building, what we're doing in the community, and it's a lot. And to think, when you just think of, I'm sure we've all had some level of an imposter syndrome at some point in time. And even just from a standpoint of coming from a church that was two campuses, it's like 2,000 members there. They got however many coming, all kind of resources, special needs ministry on both campuses. And it's just, what I'm saying? Like, most churches don't even have any special needs ministry. They got two campuses, both of them with it. And to think of like what's happening, what we're doing, and to kind of have some of those thoughts come in of just like, well, are we really providing for these people in this area and giving them opportunities to protect themselves and to be able to share their testimony with other people, or to make sure that they feel welcome and safe and seen and heard? And all, are we providing those type of things? Because I mean, even just thinking of Nehemiah, it says, after the Jews came back and said their piece, then I stationed men in the lower parts of the space behind the wall, exposed the space, and stationed the people and the families. When I saw their fear, I rose and spoke to the nobles, do not be afraid of them. And I felt like it was just this moment of like, I need to tell myself, like, hey, do not be afraid of what is coming. You might not always see what is coming, but even Nehemiah said, remember the Lord who is great and awesome. And then later, when he talks about whatever the place you hear the sound of the trumpet, rouse us, our God will fight for us. And so I just had to this is really just speaking to me, because I've always in the past been one to want to control the situation like all the time. Like, especially if it's a business thing, it's just like, oh, I want to know all the steps. I want to know how can I convert somebody and do all these things. And it's just like, I'm so not in control, and it's scary. Like, it is, I'm just going to be completely transparent. And it's just like, I have to always remember that God is in control, and he's fighting this battle of seeing life transformation and developing leaders and ministries being harvested and just showing people how to be bold in their faith. Like, it's God who truly does that. Yes, he's going to use me and make sure that I either have a breastplate or a shield or a bow or whatever it needs in that moment, but it's him who still fights the battle at the end of the day. And so I have to kind of, it just spoke a lot to me in just considering everything that we've been doing the past, really this year, but even specifically the past couple months, and how to kind of press forward in making sure that, as the pastor of this church, being a good steward over everyone, because that's what Nehemiah wants to do as well. He's having to deal with the people who are speaking negatively about them. He's dealing with the people inside who are listening to the people who are speaking negatively. He's making sure that they're resourced with what they need to get done, what needs to get done, and then still take a moment to encourage them to go forward. So it spoke a lot to me, and just thinking of where we are, and excited as we just, yes, build this wall with all of you, who everybody has their role, everybody has a station, and I can be a part of it in one way or another. So I'm just grateful for all of you, truly, in just being a part of this, because it's just like, we can't do it alone. And I think Nehemiah knows that, but he also knows his role and what he does in this. So that's what's kind of just spoken to me today.
Anybody else have anything else?
I want to say something. I don't think it says anything about how big Nehemiah was, if he was a big guy or a small guy. But I know that him having faith and believing God gave him courage. But I think that maybe because he survived death so many times when he would eat or drink food for the king, I feel like that also gave him courage to not be scared of whoever was threatening them at that time.
Mhm.
Because
Mhm.
if he was a little guy and all these, other guys were bigger than him, he probably would have been, I feel like, scared, but also if he didn't have God or he wasn't doing what he did for his king at the time, I think he wouldn't have been where he was at that moment.
Mhm. Good.
So for me, a lot of this is it speaks to having the right people and the right timing, right? The timing of God. And when you're in the right place, when you're in the will of God and you're doing the will of God, God prepares the way, right? He prepares the way and he makes it to where those foxes can't come in and present obstacles, right? So I think for me, a lot of that is about, it goes back to our previous chapters. It goes back to the preparation, right? That he put in. It goes back to the prayers that he prayed over a vision that he hadn't even asked for yet. It goes back to spending time and making sure that he had the proper plan and the proper vision, and that his vision was aligned with God. And then it also, to me, it goes back to, somebody said earlier about the people who are shoulder to shoulder with you, right? Making sure that you have the right people shoulder to shoulder with you. There are going to be times when it is, Eric, you've done everything you can do, and someone else needs to hold your arms for a while. And it's important to remember that none of this could be done by himself. Nehemiah could not rebuild this wall. He couldn't rebuild one section of the wall by himself. It was a team sport, and he made sure that he had the right team around him. And I think that that's really important, especially in this day and age when there are so many freaking foxes, right? In so many different ways that come in and try to frustrate the cause of Christ. So, for me, I just, number one, you're doing a great job. You're in the right place at the right time, I think. But looking at, how are we preparing ourselves for what God has for us?
I saw a video earlier today, and this pastor shared a clip. It was a guy who he identifies as a Hebrew Israelite, and essentially he was saying, the guy literally said that he believes that a church is his mission field. So he was deliberately going into churches to then ask questions to cause division. Like that was his actual goal. And so, like you're saying, like, is there a fox who is coming in, and that was just an example, but it could be of any belief system, if maybe they don't believe anything, but like there are going to be people who want to come in, and maybe even people who are believers, but it's just like, hey, this isn't my taste, and I'm going to kind of speak up about, well, we should be singing this way, or we should be doing this, and we should be doing that. And it's just all these little bitty things are trying to cause division and basically present a different vision than what God's really leading us towards. And so yeah, this is this is good. It's just always amazing. I think Janelle, you mentioned how, you read this and it kind of spoke to you differently this time. Just how many times can we read something over and over again, and then when we come back to it, it's just something new and fresh, and it opens our eyes in a new way because we're in a different season now, and I'm almost being more observant to different things in the text. I mean, honestly, I'm gonna just be quite frank. I totally, not that I overlooked it, but the part about the different weapons, and just like you use a bow at a different time than you would use a shield at a different time than a spear, and a spear is more close up, or yeah, you can throw it, but it's not going to have the same distance that a bow would travel, a bow and an arrow. So it's like there's all these different things, and at different times, stuff is going to stick out to you differently and resonate with you differently. And so I think that's what this is just so beautiful, how you can clearly just go through this every single year and always get something new.
Yeah, I was just explaining that concept to somebody that I was discipling, just explaining like when you hear these things like, oh, this is a living word, like that's what that means. That means that these words on this page don't die at the ink. Like this is a living word, no matter what season you're in, no matter what stage of life you're in, it will speak to you in that moment, in that way, because God is alive. He's not dead. He rose. And to understand like that concept through experiencing God by reading his word. It's just so powerful.
Yeah. Any other things from chapters 3 or chapter 4, just from today's reading and in the discussion time? All right. Do we have any prayer? We'll get ready to close out here in prayer, but any specific prayer requests that's on anybody's heart right now about either for yourself or for somebody else or a situation?
Sometime between today and Friday afternoon, I will be taking my exam to be licensed in life insurance. So I've been studying, but I hope that he fills my brain up because I'd like to only take it once.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, I want to say something really quick to do with that. There was a guy yesterday at the PHP, the building we were at, and he was showing off that he had passed the test. And I noticed that, and I told Rebecca, I was like, he passed the test. He's showing everybody. Well, when they were doing, they were calling out people who had passed their test that week. They brought him up the stage, and he had taken it 13 times.
Oh,
And
wow.
yes, and I was just like, this guy, oh my gosh, I probably would have given up after the fifth time, I'll be honest with you. But
He has more perseverance than me.
Yes.
Okay.
But it's not going to be needed. It's not going to be needed. She has passed all of her practice tests. So we're praying away all of this stupid test anxiety and all that crap. She's going to go in completely ready to go and get this done on her first try.
All right.
Right.
So you guys, a lot of you guys know a while back, there was the guy that ran between our houses with the AR, and I chased him like a dummy and all that stuff.
I don't think it's dummy.
And I was the dummy that chased him. So I have to go on the 14th to court and testify now.
Wow.
So patience, if you could just pray for patience for me, because me and lawyers don't really get along because they like to try to ask me the same freaking question 40 times. So just patience.
Okay.
But we're not going to let the foxes frustrate you, Matt. No
There you
fox.
go.
That's right.
They're lawyers. They're not foxes. They're more weasels. But
Oh my goodness. Hope there's no
Yeah,
lawyers
please.
online.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to share?
I have a praise. The study guide is ready for next week.
Don't talk about me, Matt.
So I would just like to continue to lift up our friend who lost her husband. They did his memorial service last week, and it was standing room only. So it was packed house, and she exhibited a ton of strength in getting up and doing the eulogy, and really was quite incredible. But if you've ever gone through a loss of that kind, it's when things go quiet and people stop showing up with dinners and
Yeah.
all of that really starts to set in.
Yeah.
So she and her 3 children, are alone now. So it's Christy and her kids, just, my heart is breaking for them.
There is another family that's connected to that family at our church. And so we've been talking with them about how to, like, they were there, they were present when it all happened.
Wow.
So
Yeah, I mean, at least one of his children was too. And I think that I was talking to my best friend is her best friend. And the son is the one that was at the baseball field or soccer field. I can't remember. Anyways, baseball, right? Yeah, and he said that he was the child was coming up to bat when his dad had, I don't know, whatever episode it was, and he has a little bit of confusion that he thinks that maybe his dad got hit by the ball or something like that. And so, like, I was talking to my friend, I'm like cautioning, like, be ready for the triggers. Like, you don't know what's gonna trigger it. I mean, I was an adult when my dad passed away, and I was sitting in a stoplight bawling my eyes out because some weird trigger hit me, you know. I'm not 5.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of ongoing stuff that they're gonna need, and it's gonna be more than just a casserole.
Anybody else have anything, or even if it's just a general, hey, just pray for me. Maybe no details, but if you're just saying, hey, just pray for me right now, that's welcome too.
Pray for me.
All right. Well, if there's nothing else going on, then I'll go ahead and just pray us out for this evening. Heavenly Father, thank you for just this time together, allowing us to use the means of technology to talk about you, to see how you just reveal yourself in your word, and knowing that it's more than just about a wall being built. It's about making sure that people can see you in us as people, as your created beings, and as those who are truly striving to build something great in this world, not just here on 380 with the church, but just in this world as believers. We are the universal church, a universal body of Christ, and we pray that we can use all of our members in the way that are going to build things up in our areas and not tear them down. And when opposition comes in the way, it'll come like a fox and trying to be stealth or to tear things down. We pray just against the enemy trying to take over our thoughts and just the way that we'll feel, such as with when the Jews were telling Nehemiah that they're going to try to come and attack us. We just pray against those type of negative thoughts right now, and just praying for Rebecca and her exam that she's going to be taking for life insurance agent. She's been studying just diligently for this. Just praying not just for the passing of the exam, but also for a career, for one that's something that can last for a time that she needs it for. That can be a way for her to influence and make an impact on others' lives. Thinking of what life insurance even represents, of being able to factor in generations to come. That's really what it's for. So we're just praying that she can now be that beacon of light and use it as a means in order to be you, Jesus, to somebody else, to represent you in this world in a way where not only trying to help with financial growth, but also spiritual growth. So just thank you just for this opportunity for her. We're praying that she can come out of it and just give it her best effort, knowing that she's put in the time and the work and the effort to make it happen, and that she can just have the result that's needed in order to start into this new field. Praying for Matt and just for patience as he's going to court for a recent event that was in this community. As we're grateful that he has the courage that he did to try to stand up against an intruder in the area, but also thankful for his safety in that time where, in hindsight, maybe it wasn't the best decision, not knowing what the outcome could have been. But grateful that he's still here today, that you have spared his life in a time where now he's able to testify and to truly just to give a testimony of an event and be a light in the courtroom. And so we pray that you just give him patience, knowing that there could be some anxiety that comes with just dealing with lawyers for whatever that reason is or whatever might come from it. But just give him some peace during that time and allow him to walk in just cool, calm, and collected, knowing that you're on his side and that all he has to do is just tell the truth. All he has to do is just tell exactly what happened, and everything else can fall into place. Praying for just for the gentleman who lost his life, and for his wife and their 3 kids, his wife Christy, and as was shared, when the news is immediate and things are fresh, you have maybe meals coming and people stopping by or calling, and at some point those things will cease. And so we're just praying that they can have the support that they need to go forward, that they are giving guidance from people within their circles who can steer them to the next direction that they need to go, and that she'll be able to provide for her children, that she'll be able to care for them, make sure they have all the essentials that they need, but also just to have support as she's having to not explain just to herself, but to 3 other people, really what happened, and trying to wrestle with that. And so we just praying for the twins, for them being support, for those at the church who have also been involved with it, and just for ways to us just to kind of support and to help them in this time. And so just praying to just grieve this loss, knowing that it's something that will never go away. They'll always grieve this loss, but that it will be able to become at least more manageable as time goes on. Want to give a praise to my wife for completing the study guide. Just thankful for that, so that everyone will be able to not just read, but to also to get their thoughts down somewhere to bring to the discussion. Knowing that is a heart for what we are to do, is to pour water on that seed and to make sure that we can produce good fruit. And so that comes in a time of Bible study, and now people can have a supplemental resource in addition to your word. We know that your word can stand its ground on its own, but that we are able to provide a supplement to that to make it better. And then praying for Dina as well, just whatever's going on, just in her life, if it's physical unrest, emotional, mental, spiritual, financial, we just pray that you just continue to cover her, that you continue to comfort her, and that whatever might be causing her to have certain thoughts or to do certain things, that those things can just be removed, and allow her to continue to seek you and to follow you in all things. Praying for everybody on this call, just for safety, as this weather is changing, praying for their health as well. We know with the big changes in temperature that it can cause sickness. So just praying that people can just stay healthy, that they can do what they need to do to stay healthy, not just for themselves, but also for their families. And for those, also for everyone in the church, for those that aren't able to make the call today, we're just praying just over them, just keeping them covered in prayer, making sure that they are safe, and that they have everything that they need as well in order to be good stewards and to be a light in this world. So just thank you, God, just for giving us this community, to be with one another, having a burden for each to share in, but knowing, as the word says, that we all also have our own load that we need to hold and stand our ground as we're building up our portion of the wall, and even at the gates, and looking for those who are trying to come in to steal, kill, and destroy. And so, Lord, just thank you for this time, praying for a great rest of this week, until we meet again. And we pray this, Jesus, in your name. Amen.
Amen.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Love you
Safe.
guys. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks.